Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, first canto, chapter 18, verse 3. Utsrijya sarvata sangam
Usreya Sarvata Sangam.
vyagata jita samstitihi
Vigyatya Samasatiti.
vayasakir jahau shishyo
Vayasake Jao Shishyo.
gangayam svam kalevaram
Gangayam Swam Kalevaram.
utsrijya sarvata sangam
Utsretya Sarvata Sangam.
vyagata jita samstitihi
Vidyatya Jigata Samsati.
vayasakir jahau shishyo
Vayasake Jao Shishyo.
gangayam svam kalevaram
Gangayam Swam Kalevaram.
utsrijya sarvata sangam
Utsretya Sarvata Sangam.
vyagata jita samstitihi
Vidyatya Jigata Samsati.
vayasakir jahau shishyo
Vayasake Jao Shishyo.
gangayam svam kalevaram.
Gangayam Swam Kalevaram.
Okay, word by word. Utsrijya,
Utsretya.
after leaving aside.
Inside.
Sarvataha,
Sarvata.
all around.
All around.
Sangam,
Sangam.
association.
Association.
Vigyata,
Vigyata.
being understood.
Being understood.
Ajita,
Ajita.
one who is never conquered.
One who is never conquered.
The personality of Godhead.
Personality of Godhead.
Samstitihi,
Samstiti.
actual position.
Actual position.
Vayasake,
Vayasake.
unto the son of Vyasa.
Unto the son of Vyasa.
Jahau,
Jahau.
gave up.
Gave up.
Shishyaha,
Shishyaha.
as a disciple.
As a disciple.
Gangayam,
Gangayam.
on the bank of the Ganges.
On the bank of the Ganges.
Svam,
Swam.
his own.
His own.
Kalevaram,
Kalevaram.
material body.
Material body.
Translation. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa, Sukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last gave up his material body on the bank of the Ganges. Purport. The word Ajita is significant here. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is known as Ajita, or unconquerable, and he is so in every respect. No one can know his actual position. He is unconquerable by knowledge also. We have heard about his Dhamma, or place, eternal Goloka Vrindavan, but there are many scholars who interpret this abode in different ways. But by the grace of a spiritual master like Sukadeva Goswami, unto whom the king gave himself up as a most humble disciple, one is able to understand the actual position of the Lord, his eternal abode, and his transcendental paraphernalia in that dham, or abode. Knowing the transcendental position of the Lord, and the transcendental method by which one can approach that transcendental dham, the king was confident about his ultimate destination, and by knowing this he could leave aside everything material, even his own body, without any difficulty of attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita it is stated, Param drishtva nivartate. One can give up all connection with material attachment when one is able to see the param, or the superior quality of things. From Bhagavad Gita, we understand the quality of the Lord's energy that is superior to the material quality of energy, And by the grace of a bona fide spiritual master like Sukadeva Goswami, it is quite possible to know everything of the superior energy of the Lord, by which the Lord manifests his eternal name, quality, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Unless one thoroughly understands the superior or eternal energy of the Lord, it is not possible to leave the material energy. However, one may theoretically speculate on the true nature of the absolute truth. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Maharaja Pariksit was able to receive the mercy of such a personality as Sukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to know the actual position of the unconquerable Lord. It is very difficult to find the Lord from the Vedic literatures, but it is very easy to know him by the mercy of a liberated devotee like Sukadeva Goswami. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa, Sukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last gave up his material body on the bank of the Ganges. So, I'm going to go off the rails from what I was originally planning on saying from the very beginning. On the way over, I was reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and by the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime came up, which is very relevant in this regard. So I thought that I would share about that pastime. I would read a section from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to you all, along with a section of purport, and then go from there, discuss it in relation to this verse. So this is Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Adi Kanda, chapter 7, and I'm going from verse 161 to 180. So one day, after Jagannath Mishra went for his duties, the Lord, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, became very angry because he was not allowed to study. So backstory is that Jagannath Mishra, chapter 7 of Adi Kanda. Yeah. 161. Not Caitanya Charitamrita. Okay. So why was he not being allowed to study? Is because his brother Vishvarupa was incredibly learned and also an incarnation of Lord Nityananda or Anantashesha. He's accredited with both. Of course, Anantashesha is an expansion of Lord Nityananda, so no contradiction in that. And he was very learned. He would spend all of his time speaking about the absolute truth. He was extremely philosophical. He would go to the house of Advaita Acharya and please Advaita Acharya by speaking about the conclusion of the Vedas. It's a really wonderful section of Chaitanya Bhagavat, hearing about what he was like in that regard. And then he took sannyas. So Lord Chaitanya's father, Jagannath Mishra, was terrified that Lord Chaitanya would also take sannyas. And so in order to prevent that, he prohibited Caitanya Mahaprabhu from engaging in any further studies. Nimai, child Caitanya Mahaprabhu, was very, very much inclined towards studies. And so he decided to prohibit Caitanya Mahaprabhu from further studies to try and keep him from taking sannyas. He thought if Nimai is uneducated, then he won't understand the difference between matter and spirit, and thus he won't be inspired to renounce material life. Of course, that's like an external explanation, but so continuing on, he then sat down on the old rejected pots that had been used for preparing offerings for Lord Vishnu. This topic is most confidential. Whoever hears it will attain devotional service to Lord Krishna. Using those rejected pots as a simhasana, Lord Gaurasundara smiled as he sat there. The black soot from those pots decorated Gaura's limbs, and he appeared like a golden doll smeared with sandalwood pulp mixed with a guru. His friends went and informed Mother Shachi, Nimai is sitting on the rejected pots. When Mother Shachi went there and saw Nimai in that condition, she lamented and said, My dear son, this is not a proper place to sit. Those are rejected pots, and if one touches them, he must take bath. Haven't you understood this by now? The Lord replied, You don't allow me to study, so how will I know the difference between good and bad, or a fool and a brahmana? I am a fool, so I don't know which place is good and which is bad. Therefore, I consider all places equal. After saying this, the Lord smiled from his seat on the rejected pots and accepted the mood of Dattatreya, the topmost knower of the absolute truth. Mother Shachi inquired, You have sat in an impure place, so how will you purify yourself? The Lord replied, My dear mother, you are very childish. I am never in an impure place. And then a section from the purport. It is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antilila 4:176, Dvaite bhadra bhadra jnana sabha manodharma, e bhala e manda e sabha brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore saying, quote, this is good and this is bad, is all a mistake. And in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11:28-4, it is said, Kim bhadram kim abhadram va dvaitasya vastuna kriyat vachoditam tad anritam manasadhyatam evacha. Anything not conceived in relationship to Krishna should be understood to be illusion, maya. None of the illusions uttered by words or conceived in the mind are factual. Because illusion is not factual, there is no distinction between what we think is good and what we think is bad. When we speak of the absolute truth, such speculations do not apply. The considerations of purity and impurity accepted by attached householders who follow the doctrine of the non-devotional materialistic smartas are not accepted by the Vaishnava Smritis. According to Vaishnava Smritis, the service and ingredients of service offered for the pleasure of the Lord can never be considered unpalatable, perverted, or impure. This pure consideration found in the Vaishnava Smritis and propounded by Sri Gaurasundara has created havoc in the material rules and regulations of the smartas, who are maddened by mundane sensual knowledge. Then continuing on, wherever I am, that place becomes most sacred. The Ganges and all other tirthas are present at that place. Purity and impurity is only our mental creation. Please consider what fault is there with the Creator. Even if something is considered impure by the Vedas and people in general, can it remain impure after I touch it? In fact, these pots are not at all contaminated, because you have used them to cook for Lord Vishnu. The pots used in cooking for Lord Vishnu are never contaminated. Indeed, simply by the touch of his cooking pots, other places become purified. Therefore, I never reside in a contaminated place. Everything becomes pure by my touch. The Lord, in the mood of an ordinary child, smiled as he spoke on the absolute truth. Still, no one recognized him due to the influence of his illusory energy. So, how is this section from Chaitanya Bhagavat relevant to this verse that we have just read? You are probably asking in your mind. And the answer is that for a pure devotee of Krishna, such as Maharaja Pariksit, there is nothing on the material level that is pure and impure. Rather, the pure devotee sees purity and impurity on the spiritual level in relation to something's conduciveness or lack thereof to devotional service. The devotee is truly samadarshana because the devotee is seeing everything connected with and under the control of Krishna. And the devotee sees every situation as an opportunity for devotional service. So the devotee is seeing behind every situation that she encounters. She is seeing Krishna there. And this isn't simply on a theoretical or sentimental level for us who are not pure devotees. We might think of this as being a kind of sentiment. You know, we hear like from Christians, we might have heard that something happens, oh, God has a plan, or God's guiding me. And so they may have some realization of that, but often when people say such things, it's on a completely theoretical level. When we ourselves say such things, it might also be on a theoretical level. But for the pure devotee, there's nothing theoretical about this point, actually. The pure devotee is imminently and intimately experiencing Krishna with them at all times. And the pure devotee is, Krishna reveals to the pure devotee that Krishna is behind everything. So the devotee is not seeing everything as separate from Krishna as we do in material life, but rather the devotee is seeing everything in relation to Krishna, even material, so-called material energy or so-called material circumstances. The devotee is seeing how Krishna is behind everything. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, a very famous verse, my Gurudev's favorite verse to quote in all of Shastra, Sarvasya chaham hridisannivishto matasmritir jnanam apohanam cha. This means that Krishna is saying, I am within the heart of all living entities, and from me comes all knowledge, all remembrance, and all forgetfulness. So that's a pretty comprehensive statement of how Krishna is behind everything from within the heart of all living entities. And the pure devotee is actually seeing this, that Krishna is within the heart of all living entities. The pure devotee is actually seeing that Krishna is guiding all living entities, and that everything which is going on is the result of that guidance from within the heart on the part of Krishna. And Maharaj Pariksit is no exception to this point. Maharaj Pariksit understands that Krishna is within the heart of all living entities, that if he is cursed by a Brahmana boy to die in 7 days, as we are going to read about later in this chapter, there's no question of auspiciousness or inauspiciousness in regard to this on the material level. By mundane vision, if one is cursed to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird, that would be considered very inauspicious. If you were looking at your astrological chart and you saw this, then the astrologer would say that this is a very inauspicious time to be bitten by a snake bird and killed, or to be cursed by a Brahmana boy. So by mundane calculation, one would see this as very inauspicious. and one would see this as a very lamentable situation. But we are going to find after Maharaj Pariksit is cursed that he has no lamentation for the situation. He does lament, he is going to lament that he breached etiquette in terms of how he dealt with the Brahmana boy's father. But in terms of the situation itself of being cursed, he does not see that as inauspicious at all, because he is seeing with spiritual vision, and thus he understands that being cursed to die in 7 days is actually a very auspicious opportunity for a new engagement in devotional service. And thus we can note in regard to Suta Goswami's mentioning this episode of Maharaj Parikshit's life, that Suta Goswami is not mourning this. Actually, if you read this first half of this chapter altogether, then you will see that first of all, Suta Goswami is giving glorification of Maharaj Pariksit. He's giving like 7 or 8 verses of glorification of Maharaj Pariksit, and this is in the very middle of these verses. So Maharaj Pariksit is here glorifying, or Suta Goswami is glorifying Maharaj Pariksit, that Maharaj Pariksit is cursed to die in 7 days, and that he then, the auspicious part of it, that he uses it in devotional service. He gives up all of his association. Utsrijya means he discards it, throws it away, and he goes to the bank of the Ganges, where he surrenders himself to Sukadeva Goswami as a disciple, and thus hears Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and is prepared for a very auspicious, devotionally auspicious passing from this world. And we are also blessed with auspiciousness from this event in Maharaj Parikshit's life. So, although this chapter is entitled Maharaj Pariksit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy, if you, again, read through the entire chapter together, one will see an interesting point about this, which is that more than half of this chapter is not about Maharaj Pariksit becoming cursed by a Brahmana boy. So, interesting. And so many chapters ago, the sages of Naimisharanya inquired to Suta Goswami about the history of Maharaj Pariksit in relation to the pastimes of Krishna. And so here we find that Suta Goswami is kind of wrapping up this discussion of the glories of Maharaj Pariksit and his pastimes in relationship to Krishna. And Suta Goswami is here giving a summary of those pastimes. He's going to go over all the points that he has made up till now. And then he's going to, and he's also sort of giving a conclusion to everything that he has described about Maharaj Pariksit. This is kind of the digested, it's like the Reader's Digest version of the previous chapters that we have read. And then the sages are going to spend many verses, something like 20 verses, glorifying Suta Goswami and glorifying the nectarian discussions given by Suta Goswami to the sages about Krishna and about Krishna's devotees. So we should take note of sections of Bhagavatam that are like this, in which the point of this section of the chapter, or further in Bhagavatam we'll find entire chapters, the point of this is not a pushing on of a narrative. It's not the continuation of a story. Actually, here we are seeing a pause in the current of the narratives being told that form kind of the backbones of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So this first half of the chapter we could kind of see as like a speed bump. It forces us to slow down for a moment, and we are invited by the prayers and expressions of appreciation by Suta Goswami and the sages to actually reflect on what we have heard thus far and reflect on the overall situation of what has been described. And so we're going to see that once Suta Goswami is done speaking in a few verses, the sages don't just ask Suta Goswami, all right, what happened next? Instead, they take a moment to express that, wow, Maharaja Pariksit is so amazing, Krishna is so amazing, and discussion about Krishna and his devotees is so amazing. And as I said, there are a few sections of Bhagavatam that are like this, where we as readers are offered the chance to slow down and reflect. And the examples which most prominently came to my mind in this regard are in the 10th canto. There's 2 chapters which do this, at least 2 chapters. But the ones that came to my mind were the Venu Gita and the chapter, the description of autumn. So how many of you have read Krishna book, or at least up to when Krishna leaves Vrindavan? So please read Krishna book. It's very nectarian. The more you read it, the more and more you will appreciate it. But one thing that you will notice when you read Krishna book or when you read the 10th canto is that the 10th canto, chapter after chapter, is full of one action-packed encounter after another, one pastime after another in which Krishna is engaging in so much action, killing demons. He is interrupting sacrifices on the part of his father. He's dealing with Indra. One thing after another. And then suddenly Sukadeva Goswami tells us that one day Krishna, along with his friends, beautifully and gracefully marched into the forest to tend the cows. And you know who stayed behind thinking about him? It was the gopis sitting together at home, were thinking of Krishna, wishing they could be with him, and they began to sing to each other about his beauty. So this is an opportunity for us to stop and reflect when we encounter the Venu Gita. The gopis don't speak about Krishna in terms of action-packed adventures. They're not focusing on Krishna killing one demoniac entity or another. Instead, their meditation is on, they give a beautiful description of Krishna entering the forest along with his cows. They give a very detailed description of what is Krishna wearing. You can actually, there are many of the words, you can go and look it up and you'll find like exactly the kind of flowers that Krishna's wearing on his ears, exactly the kind of flowers that he has in his hair, exactly the kind of minerals that his face is decorated with. It's a very beautiful thing to meditate on. And then the gopis proceed to spend the entire chapter talking about all of the different residents of Vrindavan and how they relate to Krishna within the forest. They speak about Govardhan Hill. They speak about the trees and the creepers and the bushes. They talk about the Yamuna River. They talk about the deer. They talk about the birds. And they just become fully engaged in this meditation. And there's so much that one can learn from really thoroughly studying these songs, this song that the gopis sing about Krishna's travel through the forest and how all these different devotees relate to Krishna in the forest, and the gopis' own longing to be able to serve Krishna in the way that all these other living entities are serving him. And then the description of autumn as well. Again, we find so many action-packed things, and then all of a sudden, Sukadeva Goswami starts describing about the rainy season and the autumn season in Vrindavan. And it's actually quite a long chapter in which he's describing this. So one might think, as I did the first couple times I read this, or really until recently reading it, that it almost seems like kind of a random thing, right? Because we are, many of us might be reading Krishna book as like a storybook, but Sukadeva Goswami shows us that no, this isn't a storybook. Krishna's pastimes are not just like an action story, but rather there is something to stop and think about and meditate on in regard to these pastimes. And so Sukadeva Goswami spends a long time setting the scene of what is Vrindavan like during the rainy season, what is Vrindavan like during the autumn season, and then he connects the descriptions he gives to so many philosophical points. And it's very, if you can, calm your mind down and really read and focus on this chapter, the description of autumn, it's very, very beautiful. So, so in this way, we should understand that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is not just about hearing one story after another, but rather Bhagavatam is about pouring nectarian waters of Krishna-katha unto our desert-like hearts, and by so nourishing and cleansing the heart, from the heart will sprout so many beautiful fruits and flowers, which are knowledge of Krishna, understanding of how to connect with Krishna, and heartfelt emotions towards Krishna. These are the fruits and flowers which come from studying the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, not just having stories in one's mind that one can regurgitate, but rather there's actual substance of devotional service that arises from hearing the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and that connects us with Krishna. So in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, chapter 25, verse 25, we hear a very famous verse in regard to this, in regard to the effect of hearing Krishna-katha and how it transforms the heart. And some of you might know this. I'm sure Ananta knows this. So the verse is, Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana katha tajoshanad ashva pavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. This means the spiritually powerful message of Godhead can be properly discussed only in a society of devotees, and it is greatly pleasing to hear in that association. If one hears from devotees, the way of transcendental experience quickly opens, and gradually one attains firm faith that in due course develops into attraction and devotion. So this is the point of hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It's meant for transforming the consciousness of those who hear it. And in the first canto, we get a very nice verse in this regard, that it's meant for creating a revolution in the hearts of those who hear it. So we as listeners, as we are listening to and reading and discussing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we should take the time to reflect on what we've heard. We should try to think about how we will apply what we've heard. And we should try to find within our hearts, within our hard hearts, some meaningful reaction to what we've heard. And also keep hearing and seeking guidance on how to apply what we've heard from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Because we are hard-hearted after countless lives of contact with material nature, we may hear these descriptions and not feel any emotional reaction within our heart. But if we continue to hear, if we continue to water the seed of devotional service through hearing about Krishna from pure devotees, then our heart will become softened, and then we can actually have heartfelt emotional absorption in discussion about Krishna and his devotees. And this is something that all souls are searching after. All souls are searching after an absorption in emotions and in relationships. This is something that excites us so much to the point that we will even watch movies, mundane movies, even about situations and personalities that don't even exist, and we'll develop some attachment, right, to these characters, to these situations, and we will have some emotional reaction to seeing these movies or reading these mundane books, even though they're, even on a material level, that's not real. But our heart is so inclined towards this emotional absorption that we are willing to accept it in conditioned life in whatever form it comes to us. So therefore we should understand this proclivity and then try and apply that to Krishna, try and apply that to Krishna's devotees. We can overcome the onslaught and shackles of material nature when we develop this higher taste in an attraction to Krishna and his devotees, and an attraction to devotional service. And when we develop this heartfelt attraction, then Krishna allows himself to be put under the control of such a devotee who is so attracted. Krishna is controlled by love, not by necessity, but by desire. Just as we desire to be controlled by love, we like to be absorbed in and carried away by loving sentiments towards other living entities or towards Krishna. So Krishna is also like this. Krishna enjoys being carried away by loving sentiments towards his devotees and controlled by the loving sentiments of his devotees. And so, although Krishna is ajita, which means unconquerable, he is conquered by the devotee who takes the time to hear about him and to develop an attachment to him, and thus in love actually will direct Krishna in so many ways. And we find this in perfection in the pastimes of Krishna in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And Lord Brahma, in chapter 14 of the 10th canto, comments on this point. Another very famous verse. Lord Brahma says, Gyane prayasam udapasya namanta eva jivanti san mukaritam bhavadiya vartam stane stita shrutigatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayaso jita jito pyasitais trilokyam. Says, those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to descriptions of Krishna's personality and activities, dedicating their life to these narrations, which are vibrated by Krishna personally and by Krishna's pure devotees. Such a devotee certainly conquers your lordship, Krishna, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. So as Prabhupada pointed out from the very beginning of the purport, one cannot approach Krishna on one's own simply by one's power of intellectual prowess. It is only by the mercy and the guidance of a pure devotee that one can actually approach and understand Krishna. Otherwise, Krishna is very expert in keeping himself concealed to those who are not surrendered. And Krishna speaks on this in the Bhagavad Gita in many instances, but very famously, chapter 7, verse 25, Krishna says, Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritaha mudhoyam nabhijanati loko mam ajamavyayam. Krishna says, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So for the non-devotee, Krishna conceals himself, but just as we ourselves would conceal ourselves partially or completely from someone who doesn't have affection towards us, right? If you're just walking down the street, you don't just approach a random person and start like spilling your whole life story, all the intimate details of what's going on in your thoughts, unless you're mentally ill. People who are mentally ill do that. But someone who's sane in mind would not do such a thing, such as Krishna. Krishna does not do such a thing. But for the devotee, Krishna willingly reveals himself, just as on the flip side, any person would reveal him or herself to someone that they are intimately connected with. This is a symptom of having a real relationship with someone, that they are sharing their mind in confidence with you, and that they are also giving you an opportunity to share your mind in confidence with them. And Krishna also says this in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 1. Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Shrinu Me Paramam Vachaha Yatteham Priyamanaya Vakshyami Hitakam Yaya. Krishna says, listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. And also, earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in chapter 9, Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumaviyam. Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So one might ask, hearing that verse, Krishna is saying that he's going to tell Arjuna the most secret of all secrets. Well, what's the context of Krishna saying this? He's right in the middle of a battlefield with like thousands of people on either side who are listening to what he's saying. So normally, if one is going to tell the most secret of all secrets of one's heart, one doesn't do that in the middle of an assembly of thousands of people. So how can one understand this point that this is the most secret of all secrets, what Krishna is going to tell Arjuna? So the knowledge that Krishna gives in that chapter of Bhagavad Gita is how one can become connected with Krishna in devotional service. And this is the most secret of all secrets because, again, it's not something that can be intellectually understood. It's something that is only revealed within the heart to the devotee, proportionate to the devotee's surrender to Krishna, and proportionate to the devotee's taking shelter of the spiritual master. And when one is actually fed up with the onslaughts of material nature, then one can actually surrender to the spiritual master meaningfully and inquire about the nature of Krishna. And so we see in the 11th canto, chapter 3, verse 21, it says, Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam, that therefore any person who seriously desires happiness must seek a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. So So this is the process by which we can understand Krishna. And then when we actually become established in real knowledge of and love for Krishna, then we can truly understand him. And the same traits of Krishna which bewilder and distract the unfaithful, as Prabhupada said in the purport, those same traits and those same qualities and activities will for us become sources of amazement and beatitude. We'll have a loving, wondrous happiness in hearing about these things. And so I wanted to wrap up by reading another purport from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This is from Brahma Samhita 533. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabham Durlabham Atma Bhaktau Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So this is saying, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas. Prabhupada alluded to this verse in the end of the purport. But Krishna is obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul. Krishna is without a second. He is not subject to decay. He is without a beginning. His form is endless. He is the beginning, and he is the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's elaboration on this is very wonderful. I know I'm going a bit over time, but please tolerate. So he says, Advaita means indivisible truth, who is knowledge absolute. Brahman, the infinite, emanates from him as an effulgence, and God immanent, Paramatma, as his constituent. But nevertheless, he remains one and indivisible. Achyuta means that though myriads of avatars emanate from him as subjective portions, and millions of jivas as separated spiritual particles, still he remains intact as the undivided whole of fullest perfection. Though Krishna indulges in exhibiting the pastimes of birth, etc., he is still without a beginning. Though he disappears after the pastimes of his appearance, still he is eternal. Though without origin, yet he is with an origin in his pastimes of appearance. And although eternal in essence, he is still a person in the full bloom of youth. The sum and substance of it is that though he possesses diverse and apparently mutually contradictory qualities, they are in universal harmonious concordance by dint of his unthinkable potency. This is what is meant by Chiddharma, transcendental nature, as distinguished from the material. His graceful threefold bending form with flute in hand possesses eternal blooming youth and is above all unwholesomeness that is to be found in limited time and space. In the transcendental realm there is no past and future, but only the unalloyed and immutable present time. In the transcendental sphere there is no distinction between the object and its qualities, and no such identity as is found in the limited mundane region. Hence, those qualities that seem to be apparently contradictory in the light of mundane conception limited by time and space exist in agreeable and dainty concordance in the spiritual realm. How can the jiva realize such unprecedented existence? The limited intellectual function of the jiva is always contaminated by the influence of time and space, and is therefore not in a position to shake off this limitedness. If the potency of cognitive function does not extend to the realization of the transcendental, what else can? In reply, Brahma says that the transcendental absolute is beyond the reach of the Vedas. The Vedas originate in sound, and sound originates in the mundane ether. So the Vedas cannot present before us a direct view of the transcendental world, Goloka. It is only when the Vedas are imbued with the chit potency that they are enabled to deal with the transcendental. But Goloka reveals itself to every jiva soul when he is under the influence of the spiritual cognitive potency joined to the essence of ecstatic energy. The ecstatic function of devotion is boundless and is surcharged with unalloyed transcendental knowledge. That knowledge reveals Goloka Tattva, the principle of the highest transcendental, in unison with devotion, without asserting itself separately, but as a subsidiary to unalloyed devotion. All right, I will stop there. Are there any questions or comments or complaints?
I had a reflection on how Maharaj Pariksit, you mentioned how Maharaj Pariksit, when he got cursed, he did not lament about the curse. He just accepted it, and then he took that curse as an opportunity to seek a spiritual liberation, right? Because he was using the spiritual vision, not the material vision. And I was reflecting on that, like how many times if something like that, if a situation doesn't go my way or the expected way, like how easily it affects my emotions. Like I get sad, I get angry, especially in interaction with my even close friend or family member. It's like a really I struggle. It easily affects me in that way. And then you later answer that as well, because all souls are looking to observe in emotion, because I think that's what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking to observe in anger, like if I'm looking to observe in sadness or and that needs to be changed, right? So I was reflecting on how we can learn from Maharaj Pariksit to use our spiritual vision rather than the material vision, and not let the situation affect us.
Yeah, well, I would give a little addendum to what you said, that we cannot change our propensity for emotional engagement. Rather, we can redirect it. It's the inherent nature of the soul to be emotionally engaged. And so we can redirect that from the material energy to the spiritual energy, to hearing and talking about Krishna and remembering Krishna's activities, his form, his qualities, his names. Then we can have real emotional absorption. And I encourage you all to read Nectar of Devotion. You will see very detailed and thorough explanation of those, of what it means to be emotionally absorbed in the qualities and pastimes of Krishna. It's very wonderful and deep. Yeah. And then also, just on a practical level, the devotee, they see practically, they have experience that Krishna is guiding everyone. And so, although something might happen outside of the realm of what the devotee planned, then the devotee is still understanding that Krishna is there, Krishna is protecting me, and the devotee is confident in this. This is one of the elements of Sharanagati, of surrender to Krishna. And so the devotee doesn't become bewildered. This doesn't mean that the devotee doesn't have an idea of how she would like to serve Krishna, but the devotee is also willing to accept it when Krishna shows that there's some other avenue of service. And the devotee is confident that leaving the body doesn't mean anything inauspicious, but rather that, again, because Krishna is guiding within the heart from lifetime after lifetime, then if the devotee is sincere, then Krishna will arrange for the devotee to be engaged in simply a new kind of service. So there's no reason to lament or be afraid for such a devotee.
I have a question about,
Yeah.
so for devotional service, to be devotional service, do you need to do it with devotion? Like what if you don't feel love and devotion in certain service?
And so like you're just doing it as like duty?
Well, duty is, I was reading about this last night, because I never knew what mode of ignorance I guess doing it out of duty is still a mode of goodness, right?
Mm.
So what if you're like doing it in like a mode of ignorance?
Like begrudgingly, you don't want to do it, you're just doing it.
Yeah.
Well, then you're still acting out of a sense of duty to an extent, isn't it? I mean, if we have faith in the process of devotional service, we have faith in our spiritual master, then that is itself devotional service and attraction. It's an immature level of attraction. I mean, if that's all that we have, if we just have like some basic faith in the process, there's a lot more maturing to do beyond that. But nevertheless, that is still devotional service if we're acting in pursuance of the ultimate path. And thus, we might not, from moment to moment, feel motivated. But if we are appreciating and have faith in the overall path, then even though our mind might feel one way or another, we can still count what we're doing as devotional service. It's devotional service in practice. So we should also understand the distinction. So yeah, we should notice these shortcomings in ourselves, but also not let ourselves become like overwhelmed or discouraged by these. Because it's just the nature of the mind to accept and reject. As Arjuna says in, I believe, chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, he says that the mind is very difficult to control. It's like trying to control the wind. You can't do it. But Krishna says by higher engagement you can control the mind. That might be in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One of the two. I hope that answers your question a little. Anything else? Alright, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.